What is impossible? 150 years ago, this was impossible. 120 years ago, this was impossible. And 70 years ago, this was impossible. By 2050, our planet will be home to 9 billion people. And feeding everyone may seem impossible, but that's just because it hasn't been done yet. At Mosaic, helping the world grow the food it needs isn't just our job, it's our mission. Roughly half the world's crop yields depend on fertilizers. And like the scientists, engineers, and innovators before us, we believe new technologies can solve old problems. Our diverse team of talented people around the world is helping us feed the world by approaching old challenges in new ways, enhancing soil and crop health, pioneering new ways to help plants thrive in stressful conditions, enabling farmers with digital access to agriculture products, sustainable practices, and insights from around the world, deepening our commitment to protecting the environment, creating biologicals that enable plants to pull nitrogen directly from the atmosphere, slow climate change, and promote sustainable farming, fortifying our supply chain, and strengthening our ability to get fertilizer to farmers, automating our operations, manufacturing safer and faster, and finding efficiencies to help make food more abundant. We're even helping farmers grow more food with less fertilizer. With the world's population soon to reach 9 billion, Mosaic does more than imagine an impossible future. We design it, engineer it, and build it. So, what is impossible? It's just something that hasn't been done yet. Mosaic. We help the world grow the food it needs.
On YouTube, so you can get all of the anything you missed during our 3 days here at Big Iron. I'm very pleased to have with us Greg Machinery Peterson, Minnesota native. Aren't you from like Benson area or in
Benson, Minnesota?
There we go.
Bonus points for you, Don.
All right, but now in Rochester, right?
Yeah, been down in Rochester for almost 35 years now. My wife Jackie grew up there. Great place to raise our kids, and it did take me a little while to get used to Rochester. Benson was 3,400 people. Rochester, it was like 90,000 when I moved there. Now it's like 130, but
yeah,
good people down there.
Now, I think it's an interesting story, and just even how you got started doing what you're doing, because you've got a very unique niche. Tell us how you got into this.
Well, I do get asked that a lot, Don. Machinery Pete, how the heck did you start this thing? And I actually have to take it back to my dad, Jerry, who's turning 87 this month, back in Benson. Third generation John Deere dealer, so I kind of grew up around the farm equipment. But in the 80s, I was off of college. I was studying accounting at Gustavus, and was not a very good student. I should have paid more attention, but I love numbers, and I loved the auditing aspect, getting under the hood with businesses, seeing what makes them tick, and then the financial part of it. So I did accounting work for a year in the Twin Cities while my wife, soon-to-be wife, Jackie, was finishing up college. We were engaged. She graduated, we got married summer of '89. She got a teaching job in Rochester, her hometown, at the last minute. It was very hard to find a teaching job in 1989, elementary. So we were super excited. We get to move back to Rochester, and I was just looking for an accounting job. And there was a 1-month window in there, October, November of '89. My dad called me up And he said, hey, come back to Benson, I gotta show you something. So I drive 4 hours home, and we went down to the Whistle Stop Cafe on Main Street, and we're having lunch, and he slid this book across the table at me, and it was an auction price book. So I didn't actually start the business. There was a banker in Morris, Minnesota, John Botane, in 1986, right in the crunch of the 80s, you know, the farm crisis. The bank had need for the, you know, hard cash valuations because there was no internet back then. Information was just hard to come by. And so he started calling auctioneers, compiling these auction prices. And my dad got a hold of this auction price book. Now, I tell people when he was leafing through it in 86, 87, 88, he didn't like seeing the numbers because, they're low. But he liked knowing, because out on his lot, he maybe had, you know, 10 8820 Titan 2 combines. And he was always like, well, if I got to sell that thing tomorrow, what's the number? It doesn't matter what I have it on the books for. If I got to sell that tomorrow.
What's the true value?
And that's what auction prices were. Now, John, who started the business, I think he had 100 subscribers paying $15 a year. So it was like a hobby. But I was 23 years old, and my dad was bummed out that John was going to stop it because he got a promotion. So he's like, oh, this book's going to go away. Hey, wait a minute, my son Greg is looking for something to do. And that's what he showed me, and I was like, well, this is interesting, but I'm 23, you know, I don't know jack. My dad said, this is really good info. And he said, you're young, you don't have kids yet. And he smiled and he said, I know you're kind of independent, which is, I'm very stubborn, is what he was saying. And father knows your son, right? So I just trusted my dad. And then, so now I'm in business. But again, you know, I had 100 subscribers at $15. So it wasn't much money. So I had two part-time jobs for like 4 years. There's a daily newspaper down there. I think the Forum owns it now. It was the Rochester Post-Bulletin. I went down there and I was a part-time sports reporter for 4 nights a week. And that actually helped me with the writing component. Yeah. Because I'd have to go out and cover Dover Yoda versus Lanesboro football and write 20 column inches on the game. And I loved, growing up in Benson, I played sports. And so, yeah, the business just slowly grew. I mean, again, it's hard to imagine there was no internet back then, cell phones. Right. You know, so I was putting this book out 4 times a year. And then as things evolved towards the end of the 90s, I'm like, I got to do a website. But it took me 2 years to find anyone, Don, who could do a data-based website. It sounds ridiculous now because it's a data-based world we live in. Yeah. But I found a company in the Twin Cities. It cost me $25,000, which I didn't have. But I was like, I got to do this. And the farm audience was great. We put up the website, and we had people subscribe for the auction prices. And then it's just grown over the years into television and radio and all social media, all kinds of stuff. So it's been a really fun ride.
So you've been partnering with Farm Journal for how long?
That was back January of 14. I was about 5 years in with our new website, and starting from that beginning when there was no money, my comfort spot was low overhead. So I still to this day work out of my basement. And I watched our kids halftime. We have 2 daughters. I just was trying to control expenses. And as the business grew and was taking off, the brand was getting bigger. I totally love what I do, but I was sleeping like 4 hours a night. And I knew that I needed some investment. I didn't want to sink millions into it myself, because I was just trying to put our 2 kids through school. And so anyway, I was looking for the right partner, and Farm Journal said, we love what you do. Just let us build around you. You keep doing what you do, Greg. And so now when you go to machinerepeat.com, the 100,000 pieces for sale, that's all become, we have a team now of like 30 people all over the country, really good people. But again, we appreciate everyone's support of our website and what we're doing.
Very cool. I love that story, the family story. I didn't realize that.
Thank you for asking.
That's very cool. And still today, that trying to find that true value of that piece of equipment is just as important today as it was back in 1989.
It'll never change. It's just the numbers have got bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, Don, I remember standing at an auction, writing down numbers, and it's like, oh, That combine sold for $200,000. You believe that? It can't go any higher. It just can't. It can't go any higher. And now, of course, we were down at Commodity Classic last, March in Houston, and Deere comes out with their new, 84,000 pound, 800 horse tractor. So we do a video on it, tell the story, but the whole audience around North America wanted to know is Machine Repeat, what's it cost? And it's $1.3 million.
Yeah.
That's new. So then, of course, okay, 1.3 million new, but when you got 250 hours on it and you got to sell it, I'm the guy standing there going, it brought 6.25. And so it's been fun to be the scorekeeper all these years. And again, we hope that the data has helped farmers, make a more informed decision about writing that check. Or when you're selling something, farmers, you can list your equipment with us for sale now. Get it in our site, costs like $50. So we're happy there. We can help people, connect buyers and sellers.
Let's talk about this equipment business today. You talked about seeing the new combine come through. John Deere's been in the headlines this summer with a lot of layoffs. Obviously, we've seen a lot of some of the big dealers around here doing auctions, trying to move inventory. What's kind of the state of the business as you see it today?
Wow, it's in major flux. Maybe more so than I've seen in my, it'll be 35 years this November. But yeah, the month of July for John Deere, I thought, was probably their worst PR month in history, with a mix of things. And it's very difficult. I mean, great people there, obviously unbelievable brand. But, when the merry-go-round, when the music slows down and the merry-go-round stops, I mean, it's hard, whether you're a farmer, manufacturer, dealer. So one of the things we're seeing is dealers now in 2024, it really started last year in July, but dealers are just smashing equipment out to auction, and they're getting clobbered, and the losses they're taking are massive. But they're trying to get ahead of it, which if you went back over my 35 years and even back over my dad's career back to the 64, if you're a dealer, it's never been really a winning strategy to hold and hope that things will get better. Now, 10 years ago, when a big dealer was 6 stores, they couldn't take all their used inventory out to auction because they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's changed, of course, now, now a big dealer is like 80 stores, and 30 stores is amazingly, that's somewhat common around the country. So their scale is different, they're capitalized different, they're run differently. So they've been absorbing these losses because it's no fun for them to pay 8% interest. I mean, that's just brutal. And so they're taking it out to auction. So one of the amazing stats that I've been tracking down is the number of 1- and 2-year-old equipment units sold at auction. And I looked at it through the month of June this year. We were up 74% over last year.
74%.
And up, here's the kicker though, because I'm so old, when the merry-go-round stops, my head immediately goes back to 2014 and 15. That was the biggest drop in used values I ever saw. It was 20 to 25% on late model large used ag, sprayers, planters, tractors. I mean, that was a big drop. And compared to 2014 through June, it was a 423% increase in dealers putting stuff out to auction. Night and day difference. And now through August, what was 74% increase has jumped to 98%. And these dealers are being super aggressive. And again, they're getting hammered on these losses. So that there was a little point in August where they kind of went, maybe we should pause a little bit here. And you're starting to see lease deals come in. At the manufacturer level, they're starting to catch up to the dealer reality. It's been really interesting, the dealer manufacturer dynamic. Because, of course, manufacturers want to push, hey, you guys keep selling new, meet your market share. And these dealers now, they're big. They have a lot of clout. And they're saying, we're going to move this used stuff.
Those dynamics are changing.
We're going to move this used stuff. So now at the manufacturer level, I'm seeing some developments that I've never seen before. And they're trying to help dealers move this stuff, which is good. But the one thing for farmers to just be aware of is it's tricky because you've got your whole career, if you've farmed for 30, 50 years, whatever, your dad, your grandpa, you've been listening to them forever. And they'll say, well, when things get tight, you know, just sit tight with your equipment and there'll be incredible deals if you need to. And that's true, but this rate of turn on the late model stuff, it's never been this fast before. So last time it turned down in spring of 13 into summer, it took about 2.5 years, auction prices went like this. And then the end of 15, they finally leveled off. So now we're doing this, and the question is how much farther and how long will we go? And that's just, the answers are in the daily auction price flow. So, you know, people tease me the last 3 years when it's like, Machine Repeat, all you ever do is say record price, and it's like, I'm just reporting what it brought today. And that market was on fire, the hottest market I've ever seen, and now things are different. So it is what it is.
So I'm looking at those dealers that you talk about at auction. Is there any changes in that? Are they doing large-scale auctions or more select kind of sales?
Well, I think, again, one of the things that's better now than 10 years ago is the whole online space. So we had online bidding. That goes back, 20 years now. But an interesting truth, Don, is that when I was tracking this stuff, the week of the pandemic, when that hit, like March 11th of 20, the corn and beans hadn't gone. They were still not that high. There was no reason for auction pricing on equipment to go up. But 1 week after the shutdown, I started to see auction prices go up. And I was kind of dumbfounded. And then the next week they went higher. So I actually wrote a blog like March 20th of 2020, and I said, wow. I think we just yanked the whole farm equipment space forward 7 to 10 years and made it more like the automobile space, where if you're a car dealer for years, that used inventory, they have their own auctions where they just wholesale it out. It's just like, hey, it's timed out, boom, just get it out of here. And we don't care, just boom, get it, move it. And on the farm equipment side, because there were more dealers that hold and hope, you know, you got these boneyards where used stuff would just sit forever. And that's not optimal for conditions of new sales. And the manufacturers know this. That's why years ago, Deere had a meeting with all the Deere dealers from around North America, and they said, take a look around, because only like 30% of you are going to be here. Now, dealers did not like hearing that. It's like, well, screw you. Don't tell me.
Yeah.
I'm your faithful dealer here, but what they were trying to drive towards was a more efficient way of moving used equipment. And again, we totally understand farmers being frustrated, losing a local dealer, merging in, and now it's, well, I don't have as much leverage. But the online thing has changed because I think with the pandemic, what happened was, I mean, if you're a farmer, you're like me, you're stubborn, you're competitive. When you couldn't go to an auction, and now it was online only, and now it's just you and your phone, and no one's gonna see if I bid again on that.
You're not bidding against your neighbor or anything either.
They're not gonna talk about it in church on Sunday. Geez, you see what Don bid 5 times on that 1770 antique. Now nobody knows. You just click the button. And what's happened is, to the benefit of dealers now, or farmers when they're having their sales, is your potential buyer, there are just absolutely no geographic walls. And then of course, the supply of used got so tight back in 21 and 2 that if you're sitting up here in the Red River Valley and you needed a new air drill, and there's one on an auction in Oklahoma, it's like, cool, I found it. Dealers don't have any, I better click the button and buy that thing. And once everyone got trained to that mentality, now there's no going back. So it's some really interesting forces happening quickly here.
So do you see any signs of opportunity now? Where do you see some of those bright spots?
Oh, opportunity that word is just becoming bigger and bigger, more neon lights. So, you know, as the values.
Good afternoon, we have a blue Chevy Silverado in Lot A, North Dakota license plate number 799DLM. You have parked in a way that you have created third row and blocked people in. Please move your vehicle immediately. Lot A, a blue Chevy Silverado. Please move your vehicle immediately, or it's going to be towed and people need
That's what I like coming up to the Red River Valley, Don. You guys don't mess around, you just say it.
Yeah.
Move your truck.
Or we're taking it.
Move your truck. Down in Minnesota, maybe, southern Minnesota, maybe we would suggest that you maybe, it's like, no, move your truck. But a blue Silverado, so that's funny, when I enter all this data all these years, and I still type a lot of the prices in myself because I want to own what the trends and stuff. But the color of a pickup, I always, we could say, oh, it's a Silverado 2500, 4x4, the engine is this, it's got 87,215 miles, crew cab, but is it blue? Is it red? Is
That
it
makes a
silver?
difference?
I'm going to compile it and let you make your decision. Now, where it gets really interesting is on the grain carts and the gravity wagons, because there you've got Brent, all these, they make a green one and a red one. So it's like, is a Brent 444 red versus more than a green one? We will tell you, and then you can, at the coffee shop, you can say, my green one is worth more than your red, or vice versa. So data has been really fun. And it's funny now, when the term big data, I don't know when that became a thing.
Yeah.
But when I was 23 years old and my dad said, this is good stuff, what he was really saying was, good trusted data is valuable.
Yeah.
And he was right, and it's been fun to be in that industry and build it out.
And like I said, it's a niche. You kind of own that market.
Well, so early on, as it started to take off, back when the internet became a thing, I had a lot of people come up and they would say, hey, machine repeat, and we'd have a good conversation, and they'd say, I had the idea to do what you were doing. And I totally get it, but I read a story in the Minneapolis Star Tribune, or the Minnesota Star Tribune, they renamed it. It was about 2 weeks ago. It was actually a writer from by Alexandria, where I grew up. And Darwin, the world's biggest ball of twine in Darwin, Minnesota? Yeah. She was making the analogy that the farmer who made that world's biggest ball of twine had an idea at the start. He didn't want to waste this baler twine. So he starts making this ball, and then it just keeps going. Now, as we move through life, we have ideas and we try things, or you start a diet or whatever. But what if you never stopped and you just kept doing that? And I'm reading this column, I'm going, I think that's me. I think, I've just been compiling auction prices for 35 years. And if you don't stop, what you wind up with, hopefully, is something that's different and powerful and useful. Now, the world's biggest ball of twine makes people hop off Highway 12 in Darwin and stop, and so it's good for Darwin. But I've hoped our machine repeat ball of twine, data-wise, has been fun. And for me, Don, the biggest fun is just the people. And so you come out to a farm show like this, and you guys do an awesome job talking to your listeners up here. And it's the people part. So as we hurdle through life, and phones are great and technology and stuff, but your life goes by in a blink. And if all of our heads are down like this all the time, what we miss is, Don, how are the kids doing? And that's the thing with the online auctions, which are great and powerful. But the last 6 to 12 months, as I travel around U.S. and Canada, I've had so many people say, Greg, we miss the physical auction. I was just talking to, where's Tom? I was talking to Tom out there about missing going to an auction. And because you're standing there, one's a Democrat, one's a Republican, but who cares? It's like, let's have a donut, and wow, look at that 40-20. That's good for as people, that's good for us.
Yeah.
So one of the things, it's kind of a three-dimensional opportunity, but whoever can figure out how to make an online auction personal, really personal, then I think you got dynamite. So it's hard for auction companies to keep investing in that, but if I were an auction company, I would want to have the owner of the equipment on live as it was selling. So say this is your Don's retirement auction.
Yeah.
And everyone's looked at all the pictures. And I always advise, it's super helpful. What I really want is a video of you talking about your planter, your tractor, your combine. And what the data part of that is, when you do that, your stuff sells for more money.
Wonderful for a live seminar.
Yes. No. They still haven't moved it. Now, the video previews are very, very powerful, because then the farmer in Kentucky who's looking at your, whatever, Quadtrac 620, I've always contended that when you're buying a piece of used equipment, you're actually buying the seller, you,
Yeah.
and how you cared for it. And when the potential buyer feels like they can know you a little bit more, then the barrier drops for them to click that bid button one more time, or I'll bid 2 more times. That Don was a good guy. The best example I've seen recently was a sale in Ada that our friends at Steffes Group had back in end of June. It was a retirement auction for Glenn and Gordon Ramstad, 2 brothers. So we were filming it for our TV show, and we came up. It was an online auction, so we can't show an auction taking place, but we talked to Gordon and Glenn about their equipment. We talked to Steffes. And as we're walking down the line of equipment, I see these handwritten notes on the equipment. 35 years, I've never seen anything like it. We got to Glenn's grain cart, which was the J&M. Had handwritten notes from it was like this long handwritten notes, March 3rd. And I was like, Glenn, why did you do that? And he said, well, we have the records in the office, Greg, but if I was here, I wanted to know exactly. So it's a form of OCD. But I knew that if I interview Glenn next to that, how is his J&M 1075 going to sell?
Yeah.
Well, it brought, I think, like 41,750, which when I looked at it is like the 4th highest price ever on that model. So Glenn and Gordon were rewarded for being Glenn and Gordon and taking the best care of their equipment. Their 1890 air seeder was unbelievable. The handwritten notes. And again, with a video, you can show that. And the other thing is that people in Arkansas like hearing us talk up here. They think we talk funny. Like, do you hear that guy talk the way he talks? And then we flip it, we think they sound funny.
Right.
So I like that. Basically, ag is personal. And it's more personal than almost any other industry as I look around. And that's what I love most about it, and I hope we can retain that.
I find that, when I think what you do, I'm thinking numbers and data, and you bring it down to that personal story, which is very, very cool. Let's talk about some of the values that you're seeing out there. I'm curious, as you're following this, what are you seeing on some of the late model? You touched on some of the values on the 1-2 year pieces of equipment. Where are we sitting today?
Well, I just did a piece for Ag Day TV, and it was interesting. I do a little segment every week, so I'm trying to relay the trends. So on the one hand, you've got that 1- and 2-3-year-old stuff, and let's say combines. So I looked at a John Deere X9 1100, and I think the average auction price this year through June was something like $509,000, which compared to what a dealer would ask on the lot, like 7.25 or something. It's a big drop, right? And the price of new is even higher. But that average auction price through the summer, from June 1st through August, dropped 10.1% down to $458,000. So that's a 10% drop in 3 months on a 2-year-old Deere combine or a 1-year-old. So the big late model stuff, tractors, combines, sprayers, they're dropping, and we understand why. But at the same time, I got an auction price report in from, I'm trying to remember where it was. It was a Farmall 75C with a loader and 1,306 hours on it. Brought 35, it was a 13 model, brought 35.5. So the livestock sector, used values are holding, they've dropped a little, but they're holding pretty strong. So you get into good used hay equipment, loader tractors, skid steers outside of the construction end of things are holding, much, much stronger. So it's hard to generalize and say the used farm equipment market is tanking because, yeah, some of it, but the livestock sector is not. They're holding pretty well. And again, that just is borne out in the auction prices, because it doesn't matter what anyone thinks this thing is going to sell for. It's what did it sell for on sale day. And the pre-def stuff, pre-tier 4, is holding really strong because, even though the late model stuff is coming down, it's still so much higher than a nice 2010, 2011, 2009 model. So that pre-def stuff, it's just what people want.
Right.
And it's checkbook reality. So if 5 guys got to have it, auction price does this. My point when I talk to particularly young farmers is that over 35 years, when you look at our data, the 4 to 7 year old age range is sort of max depreciation. And once you get out to about 10 years old, if it's in good condition, the gap between what a nice used 10-year-old one is worth and the price of new is so high and getting bigger gap that everyone wants that nice 10-year-old one. Even now, when it's not pre-def, when it's a 14 model, a 13, they still want it. So the opportunity piece is as the 2 to 4 year old stuff now is dropping quite a bit. If you can get a really nice one, low-houred one, maybe in that 5-year-old range, then in 5 years, that's going to be 10 years old. And magically, I call it my machine repeat limbo bar line, the line in the sand, the 10-year-old mark. Get it low-houred, 3 to 6 years old, and then when it's 10 years old, it'll be lower-houred, and magically, everyone wants that. So that's the opportunity now. And if you go back and look in our data at the end of 2015, so that was, we had fallen 13, 14, 15, biggest drop I've ever seen. And then the auction price leveled off November and December of 15. And I wrote a column for Farm Journal, and it was way outside my comfort zone, Don. Because I don't like telling any of you guys, well, you should do this,
Yeah.
I'm Norwegian, I don't like that. But I had to, and I said, folks, you'll never have a better opportunity to be a buyer of good used late model equipment than right now, because dealers still have too much. The values, the knife isn't dropping, it's kind of done this, it's leveled off. And if you would have bought as many Magnum 290s or John Deere 80 285Rs as you could get your hands on back then, and just shedded them, and then sold them the last 2-3 years, man, you'd just be blowing away the best stock market return in history. So there is opportunity out there, but you got to have your powder dry.
Is the inventory available if they wanted to secure that kind of stuff?
Oh, inventory is available. Yeah, it's this would be a deep cut thing, but my 35 years, there was just something that just happened with Deere that I've never seen before, and it relays to me their understanding the gravity of the inventory situation. So there's inventory, and there will be inventory. The one interesting time frame I'm looking at, Don, is November and December this year. Because when you look at our data, for 20 of the last 21 years, auction values have gone up in November and December. And we know why. I mean, it's, Section 179 of the tax code, you can write off new or used, equipment asset purchases. So farmers get hammered on taxes like you won't believe from every direction. So here's one tool where I can minimize my taxes. So that's why I've said for years, if I were having my retirement sale, I would have it November 10th. Get at the front of the line when everyone, I'll take my check. Here's my sale. And the prices go up. The 1 year in the last 21 where they didn't go up in November, December was 15. And that year they were flat. So really be interested this year to see, because dealers are going to smash stuff out end of the year because they know farmers want to buy end of the year. And I guess the only other canary in the coal mine I'm tracking, I just call it old money. So, your listeners, they're the most savvy business people in America. They just are. If you survived farming through the decades, you're good at what you do. So when they've had good years, financially they're in good shape. That's why we see land values doing what they're doing. And land values, maybe the edge has come off, but it's not like they've just tanked.
No, they've held up very strong.
Right, because it's, old money. So how long does that last, and how long is it at play? So one of the things I've loved about our data, Don, is that to me I love the chatter aspect, or my friends at Purdue, and we had a daughter that went to Purdue, it's an awesome school. They have the index, the Farmer Sentiment Index.
Yeah.
And I understand if you ask any farmer right now, how you feeling? you're not, I mean, no, you're not feeling good. I mean, it stinks. And there's not a lot of ray of sunshine, so the index is low. But what I compile is a checkbook point. What did it sell for? So one of the things I've heard of the last 6 months is that I'm 58, so guys my age and up talk negatively. Oh, we're pulling in the reins. But I did pick up an S680 at auction. Oh, it was a great deal. So it's old money, smart folks, situationally going, you know what, that's come down enough that, yeah, second machine, I'll do it. And when that starts drying up,
Yeah.
that's a different
Little
animal.
bellwether there.
Yeah.
I would say, folks, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to give us a wave. We'll get a microphone in front of you. Got one right back here? Oh, thought you had one, Jay. I'm curious, in this region, obviously, we've got a lot of specialized equipment with the beet growers, and dry beans, what have you, spuds. I know you track that stuff as well.
Yep.
You seen anything happening in that arena?
I haven't seen any, obviously the last few years when just basically used inventory got so tight, it lifted all boats. So the specialized stuff, the main grain stuff, everything lifted. It was unbelievable. But I haven't really, from our data perspective on like the beet equipment, I guess to this point, say that I've seen definitively any, just that general tightening and the late model stuff. The big, if you get over $250,000, it's, that's where a 10% drop is, it's more noticeable. And I guess that's just kind of the kicker here is that the dollars have got so big on the new side. And I always wondered over the years, it's like, can you make new equipment too expensive?
Yeah.
I always figured it was like a 4% jump every year, and then through the pandemic, oh my God, it became unhinged, right? And understand why. If you're a manufacturer, you can't get product. You had labor strikes. Tons of issues. The cost of everything went up. But when the dollars slow down, that doesn't work so good. So I was not at Farm Progress, but I heard. Again, I do like the chatter aspect. What are people talking about? And from some of my trusted friends, they were saying people were gravitating towards the simpler, whether it was, potato equipment, tractors, skid steers, whatever. Just give me something simple that maybe it doesn't have a subscription with it, a data subscription. Just, I need my horsepower, just simple. And that to me is telling because if I were a manufacturer and you're plugged into what people are thinking right now, there's so much opportunity, but if you're a manufacturer, are you able to be aggressive when everyone else is pulling back? Yeah. This is the time to gain market share if you're a manufacturer. Be more aggressive than you could ever imagine because the market share is available, but you can't be shy, you gotta go get it.
So are there certain things that are retaining value that you see better than others?
Well, again, anything pre-def,
okay,
would be top of the list. And then again, loader tractors, right up there. Good use round balers. I just did a little segment for our TV show on those. This was back last week of August. I had a New Holland roll belt 560 come in out of Iowa, and it brought like 53,875, a couple years old, not many bales. And so I see the price, and as I'm filtering as this stuff comes in, Don, it's kind of gut level. I go, that seems kind of high. So I go look, and it's like, yep, that's like 4,000 over the record. So before I could even blog that out, the next day another roll belt 560 sold up here. Where's Solon, North Dakota? I guess I lose track. But wherever Solon is, there was one that brought 56K. So you have two records in 2 days. That, again, just tells you what's, stronger. So good use hay equipment. And the smaller stuff, generally when the market gets tight. And some of that is even on combines, which they've been under pressure a year and almost going on 2 years now, dropping used values. But the nice smaller class ones, like we saw a Case IH 6130, a 13 model, so it wasn't pre-def, but it's that magic 10, 11-year-old, and smaller, so they don't make as many smaller ones, or a John Deere, S550. They hold better, the smaller ones, because they just don't make as many. So I hear this everywhere I go. Farmers are like, why don't they make more small equipment? Not all of us are 20,000 acres.
Yeah.
But, it's why I love coming up here. You guys have so many manufacturers up here. All across farm country, farmers figure out better ways to do stuff. It's a better trailer, if it's, better beat equipment. I mean, you guys invented this frickin' skid steer down the road here. I mean, they're good, smart farmers, and they make a better way. So filling those niches, just like I've tried to fill a niche, I mean, that's fun, and there's opportunity in that. If you have a great product, and one of the themes that we see now with modern equipment is it tends not to last as well, right? So it's frustrating for farmers, or anyone, or you buy a new refrigerator, and we bought a new refrigerator when we moved a year ago, and we installed it, and it, boom, 2 days, and it didn't work. Like, this is a top-of-the-line refrigerator. What's the deal? And then I post a picture on Instagram of an international freezer from 1948 that your great-grandma had. It still works.
Yeah.
So Apple business model might say that's dumb to make a product that lasts a lot. I think it's brilliant, because there's a reason people were loyal to International or Deere or whatever, because it worked.
Yeah.
And they were there when it broke down. And so you drift into these data subscriptions and stuff, and data can be awesome, but it's like, just give me a product that works. I had a buddy out in New York. You guys would remember the guy. He was the guy that had the 4455 with 3 hours on it. He bought it in 1994. He'd grown up hearing the stories about the 4020s going up in value, and he goes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to buy the world's nicest 4455 that I can find. The internet was hardly a thing. He buys this 4455 in Michigan with 3 hours on it that a doctor bought new and didn't have time to use. Takes it back to New York, sticks it in his shed for 15 years. 2012 takes it out, and he says, I'm going to sell it. And Kevin was asking, what was he asking? Like 155,000. He advertises it and sold it in 1 day. And when I interviewed him, the most interesting thing was, he's kind of an engineer background, so he went around and interviewed old John Deere engineers, and he'd ask them, tell me about the 40 series, the 50 series, the 55, the 60. And he said what the engineer, and not to pick on Deere, because it would be the same across all colors, but what the Deere engineers told him is through the 60 series, which would be 94, that the number one thing on their, hey, you're an engineer, make this tractor. The number one thing on their list was longevity. And then everything else. And of course now, that has like, the deck's been reshuffled. A lot of it's good. I mean, customer comfort. If you get into a cab now, and here's my refrigerator, and there's my satellite, and I can listen to machinery. I can listen to Don Wick on the radio, and it's great. But, I can't fix it when it breaks down so much, and it's frustrating. So that's 30 years, so things change as we go. But I think the YouTube video, I've posted 2,300 YouTube videos, and the one with the most views on it was a John Deere 4960 in Rushville, Ohio. And a young farmer, his last name was Young. His dad's name was Ryan Young. Calls me up and he goes, Machinery Pete, we just bought this tractor. He goes, I think it had 14 hours on it. And I'm like, what? You bought a 4960 with 14 hours? And the story was, the guy bought it new and drove it home to his farm, but his sheds were full. And he was a successful dude. He owned, I think, some chain of car part deals. But he just parked it outside his shed. Now, Rushville, Ohio is warmer than Minnesota, and it's humid. So trees grew up all around this thing. It's got 14 hours on it. And locally, everybody, Like if it was by Benson, Minnesota, like we wouldn't know about John's. John's got a 4960 with 14 hours on it. Everybody wanted to go see it and offered to buy it, but the family was like, get out of here.
Yeah.
So when the dad died, Ryan and Joe bought it. And Ryan told me that when he opened the door to the cab, it was still plastic on the seat, cardboard on the floor. And he said, Greg, it was a new tractor smell. So think about that engineering. You put, I mean, for what, from 92 till whenever that video was, I mean, that's 20 plus years, 20 years, and it smelled new. And they had to, amazingly, they did, I forget what Ryan said they did with the fuel, but he said, bang, it started right up. And that's a crazy far end example of an earlier model tractor that was just made different. So when a nice, even though when dollars are tight now, when a nice one shows up, the auction prices are still sky high.
Yeah.
Because that's what people want.
But look at all the fancy iron we got at a show like this, and we can look at our broadcast center right across to the antique center sitting over there, that how much interest are, because it's like, I grew up with that Alice, or, we know what that piece of equipment is.
Two years ago, Don, at the Louisville Farm Show, I'd heard wind of it, but Deere came out with a new narrow transport planner, and it was brilliant on their part. They were like, we want to visualize to farmers that you can take your older, smaller tractor and run this new planner. So they set out to find the nicest 4430 they could find. And they found a guy I did a podcast with in Indiana who had a 4430, and it just looked beautiful. And they brought that onto the show floor at the Deere exhibit. And I told people before the show, guess what the star of the Louisville Farm Show is going to be? It's going to be that 4430. And I heard there were multiple marriage proposals in front of the thing. And because, again, it reaches into your heart.
Into your soul, yeah, that's what we had, right?
And that all these years of doing my data, there's that magic 10-year-old rule. Then that's when values start to go up. The other data point I found, I call it the machine repeat rule of 12. So whatever your favorite tractor was when you were 12, I got good money in Vegas that'll always be your favorite tractor.
Right.
So for me, it was a 4440, 1977, when I was 12 years old, taking inventory on the lot. I'm like, man, this is a sweet, and that, that's your dad, that's your grandpa. And when I talk to people, Don, about this stuff, a lot of times when they say my dad or my grandpa bought that new 1086 or whatever, they remember, so this is what, almost 50 years ago, but they'll remember what day of the week it was. And they'll remember if it was cloudy out or it was windy that day, because it seared itself into it's a piece of them. So when a nice 1086, I mean, it will always magnetize them. Yeah. So.
You see any trends in like that collectible market?
Well, yes, they're right. So, I mean, so the word antique to me has always been very interesting. What does that signify? So I started doing this 35 years ago, and at the time, antique, meant A's, B's,
right?
F20s. So it's moved along. So the collector money moves with. It's basically, when do you turn 45 to 55, and if you've had enough good years to now make you go back to, oh, my favorite. I need to find me a nice 4440. So. The heat was, 15 years ago, it was on the late 60s to the early 70s, the muscle tractors, the D21s, the Vista 1000 Molines, the Deere 6030s. They're still very strong. But now it's crept up into that, kind of late 70s, early 80s, situationally, even into the 90s, which makes me, I don't say antique, because that means I'm antique, which I realize I am now, but the older stuff, 30s, 40s, 50s, in general has softened, but if you follow our Facebook and Instagram, last night when I got up here, I stayed, well, thanks to you set me up in West Fargo here, thank you. So I got to my hotel room, I checked my messages, and there's a note from a guy, he's like, Pete, did you see this sale in in Elma, Iowa today. It was by Fox Auction Company, great auction company. And I was like, no, I hadn't seen it. And they had a 1939 John Deere H, serial number 1001. It brought $58,600, and it didn't run, and it was just Patinaville, and it was, I mean, beautiful, because it had been sitting out. But that serial number, I was trying to remember, is that first or second? So on our website, we have all the serial number info, and I went and I found out, oh, it's a second one. But on the Fox auction site, it's, you know, they were very smart. You got to fill in the blanks, and it said this is the oldest known H, and they said the first one was scrapped at the plant. I don't know, but so I can't say that 30 stuff. I mean, there's some. I mean, $58,600. The highest one I'd ever seen was like $9,700 on a John Deere H, but that was a piece of John Deere tractor history that sold last night in Alma, Iowa. So it's fun to share that out, and yeah, that's the secret to this thing is every day you never know what's going to sell.
Yeah.
And there's always.
And you get that true market value at its two bidders, right?
Yeah, I look through sale price reports, and a lot of times I'll drift to the back end, and oh, there was an anvil, and it brought $750. Now, my great-grandfather was a blacksmith and made the jump to be an equipment dealer in Tolly, North Dakota in 1920, 104 years ago. So that blacksmith angle to me is always, you know, that's a piece of my history, so show me an anvil, and I want to learn about it. But when I post the picture of the anvil, I might get more reaction than I do when I post a picture of a Case 9250 combine, 1-year-old combine. So that's what I've loved. There's interest all over the whole spectrum. And if we talk 1-year-old combines, then I like to whipsaw, you know, here's a 3-bottom plow that brought this today. And it's just so much fun. I couldn't have planned any of it, but the biggest thing that I always continually have to do is just thank you guys for being connected and pulling me forward and along and sharing your stories. It's just been a joy.
We started the conversation talking about some of these dealer auctions. I guess I'm curious, going back to that, is there a value difference between what you're seeing at those dealers versus a general consignment auction?
Don, that's a really, really good question. You know, and I've always been surprised I've not been asked that more, because if you go back 35 years when I started, when we just had a book, so we had printed, here's the sale price, the date, the location. We had one column that told you the type of auction. So back then it was just farm auction, consignment, or dealer auction.
Right.
And the reason we did that is because we wanted you to know, oh, okay, well, this sold on a dealer auction, because they did tend to be a little lighter. I mean, the gold standard was a farm retirement or estate sale. And that always made sense, because if you, Don, you farm around here, everybody knew you, and if you took good care of your equipment, and they know Don was on the church board, church council, school board, great farmer, then you got a Don premium on that auction. You'd have a great auction company, and they'd do the great job. Now, what I saw over the years, and then COVID came, and it made it so there was no difference, absolutely no difference on a farm, consignment, or dealer auction. In 21 and 2, when you couldn't find inventory anywhere, it was literally like, oh, there's one in Oklahoma, click the button, got it. Whew. So now we're starting to see it split apart again a little bit. Geographically, there's kind of a Mason-Dixon line from like southern Missouri across generally, that if you go south of, it's not, up here you guys run your equipment, you shed it, you take care of it. You know, our winters are long and hard. Down south, God bless them, I love folks down there. It just, the sun is harsh, there's salt water. It was a little apples and oranges. So it's starting to split apart a little bit, and a little bit maybe on the auction again. Just in the last 10 days, I've had 3 people ask me if the online only is dropping a bit. And, you know, the data is just pouring in, so that's something we'll really be looking at. I think it depends, it really depends on the auction company. I mean, up here you have companies like Steffes and, you know, Pfeiffer, and they're just expert marketers. Their
right.
reach is for, you know, and we work with them to help the reach and stuff. So when everything is selling sky high, and we work with 1,100 auction companies and love them all, but now it's getting a little tougher to get the dollars. So what you do to market, not just the auction itself, but every piece on that auction. So one of the things I'm most excited about is the fact now that an auction company, we can take all the items on their sale and flow them into machinerypete.com. So what people don't realize, but a lot of times when you're shopping for equipment on your phone, what a lot of folks do, you just go to that white box on top, and you type in whatever, John Deere S680 for sale. And you're in Google, you're looking in Google, and then it'll pop up and it'll say Tractor House or Machinery Pete. And if you aren't number 1 or 2 on that list, it doesn't matter, because no one's ever gonna find it. So our company, again, through Farm Journal, because I didn't personally want to write these checks, the amount of money we have to spend with Google to stay at it's actually, it makes me mad, but as a business, we have to. So now the cool thing is if we have a little auction in, say, Western Montana, and they got 5 items on it, but maybe they got a HX15 Batwing that's 1 year old. That's just beautiful. It used to be they would just have to advertise the auction itself, and then you guys would have to sort through and, oh, there's that HX15. Now we get that, and it goes right into Machinery Pete. So you punch up HX15, and you got, oh, there's an auction, there's all these dealer ones. So we're letting the auction companies market not just the event, but every item on the sale, which if you're selling, if it's your auction, that's game-changing stuff. If you can engage a guy in Kentucky on his phone to, ooh, that's just exactly what I want. And since the pandemic, they're not afraid now to bid 6 states away. They just got to know about it. And that's what we're trying to do.
I love the evolutions you've seen since 1989, and that's going to continue as well.
It is. I hope in 35 years I'll be 90. I'll be 93, Don. I hope I'm still. I know a lot of farmer friends are still farming in their 90s, and God bless them. I hope I'm doing, because I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, it beats working for a living, right?
Hey, life goes by in a blink, and it's really, people say it as lip service-y kind of thing, and I think farmers more than anyone get this.
Yeah.
That even when times like this are challenging, if you can roll out of bed and say, I like what I do,
yeah,
you can't put a price tag on that. So financially, yeah, it's no fun to have these years, but the quality of your life, and not to beat up on young people, but I'm just advising, we need to get our heads out of our phones so much. Please shop at machinerypete.com. We want you to do that, but then engage, talk, which is what I love about farm shows. And again, hats off to you, Don, and the Red River, what you guys do, connecting your listeners to what's happening and people and telling stories. You guys are doing an awesome job at it. So thank you. Hand for these guys for what they do.
Thank you, Greg. Very kind of you. And again, thank you, folks. You're going to be able to stick around for a bit if folks have any questions.
Oh yeah, that's the good stuff to hang
That's
around
awesome.
and get the stories. Yeah.
Again, Machinery Pete, Greg Peterson with us. Stick around. We're going to have a session talking from folks from Ag Country, so hang tight. Thank you.
What is impossible? 150 years ago, this was impossible. 120 years ago, this was impossible. And 70 years ago, this was impossible. By 2050, our planet will be home to 9 billion people. And feeding everyone may seem impossible, but that's just because it hasn't been done yet. At Mosaic, helping the world grow the food it needs isn't just our job, it's our mission. Roughly half the world's crop yields depend on fertilizers. And like the scientists, engineers, and innovators before us, we believe new technologies can solve old problems. Our diverse team of talented people around the world is helping us feed the world by approaching old challenges in new ways, enhancing soil and crop health, pioneering new ways to help plants thrive in stressful conditions, enabling farmers with digital access to agriculture products, sustainable practices, and insights from around the world, deepening our commitment to protecting the environment, creating biologicals that enable plants to pull nitrogen directly from the atmosphere, slow climate change, and promote sustainable farming, fortifying our supply chain, and strengthening our ability to get fertilizer to farmers, automating our operations, manufacturing safer and faster, and finding efficiencies to help make food more abundant. We're even helping farmers grow more food with less fertilizer. With the world's population soon to reach 9 billion, Mosaic does more than imagine an impossible future. We design it, engineer it, and build it. So, what is impossible? It's just something that hasn't been done yet. Mosaic. We help the world grow the food it needs.